Welcome to another episode of the Be Unstoppable podcast. Today we have the immense privilege of sitting down with a true visionary in the world of business investment and entrepreneurship. Jenny Tooth OBE is not just a leader. She is a trailblazer who's dedicated her career to empowering startups and driving innovation across the UK. As the CEO of UK Business Angels Association, Jenny has been at the forefront of connecting angel investors with the brightest entrepreneurial minds, helping to turn groundbreaking ideas into reality. With decades of experience and an unwavering commitment to fostering growth in the UK's entrepreneurial ecosystem, she has played a pivotal role in shaping the future of countless businesses. Her journey is one of relentless dedication, passion, and impact. From advocating for diversity in investment to supporting female founders, Jenny's work has not only transformed the landscape of business investment, but has also earned her an OBE for her services to entrepreneurs. Jenny has been working with me to help create pathways for music entrepreneurs to gain a better understanding of the investment landscape, including access to knowledge networks and capital through the investment syndicate, and has completely helped to level me up within this space with her guidance, time, patience, and mentorship. Today, we'll dive into her remarkable career, explore the lessons she's learned, and discuss the vision she has for the future of UK businesses and how creatives can make themselves investable. It's an honor to welcome to the podcast someone who I personally greatly admire, the unstoppable force that is Jenny Tooth OBE. And remember, you have the power to choose your path in life, but always choose to be unstoppable. Jenny, welcome to the Unstoppable podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben. That was such kind words. As I just mentioned, this could be my obituary and I'm going to keep it for that purpose in one day. But so great to be here today.
Never an obituary, but totally honoring you. That's all. Let's get stuck in. So, Jenny, as a young person, what was life like for you growing up and what was your background and your household like?
Yeah, it's an interesting background because I grew up in the Black Country, as it's now called. It was called Walsall, the place I lived in, and so it was really the heart of the industry. For people who haven't been to Walsall, it's kind of between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, so it's one of those places. And it was a place I always wanted to leave. So really, I grew up with a burning ambition as to how I was going to move on from being in the industrial heartland. A lot of smells of smoke and factory chimneys in those days. This is well before the Clean Air Act, so you can tell how old I am. And so that was always part of my driving ambition. And I also had the great fortune to be in a household with a mother and a sister. We were three women and my dad. And so we were a very, very strong female-focused household. But my father had a tough upbringing himself and had no parents and had been the subject of what was in those days patronage, which helped take a young person from an actual agricultural background where he was living and gave him a chance to go to grammar school and then ultimately university. So this was a kind of really great kind of role model that we had in the household with a man who got two daughters and a wonderful wife. And really for him, his life had been transformed. And I could see that the power of education and really, having that as a driving ambition to move on, was really, really ingrained in my childhood as a result of that. And so that, that really helped me going forward massively, drove me to, in those days, do the 11 plus and get through to grammar school and do all the things that I knew were really the right steps to kind of move on and make a life for myself.
How did those early lessons of education, hard work, how did those values that you learned from your father help you approach your career, and in particularly how did that help to shape you in the world of finance and investment?
Really, my early career was not particularly linked to finance and investment. I grew up with actually a passion to want to travel, and I had the great fortune to again, through my mum's really great support, linked me into a wonderful French family. And I spent every summer in France, in Paris, and then traveling with them. And it gave me a huge passion for languages, not just French, but also Spanish and Italian. And my passion was going to be that I was going to be really working in food, drink, and travel. That was my absolute passion. And my very first job was working with a restaurant guide, which may not exist now, but it was very similar to the Good Food Guide, if people have ever heard of that. So I was working with people who are passionate about foodies, and the whole language was food and drink. My next job was in a wine company, selling wine, even standing selling champagne in the middle of Harrods. Quite a lot was drunk at the time, if I remember. So that's how I began. But I then had the great fortune to get a job as the assistant to the cultural attaché in the Canadian Commission. And this work was entirely focused on art. And it was really supporting the relationships between the creative relationships between Canada and the UK, using French as well, because obviously it was two languages in Canada. But it really gave me a passion and a really interaction with many, many amazing people from the world of arts and creativity. So that was really how I sort of then started to launch and really think that was a wonderful idea. But actually, really, my whole thinking was I needed to understand more about business. I needed to understand more about finance. So I actually went back. I'd done my first degree in languages at London University, but I actually went back to London School of Economics and did a master's in economics, but very much focused on finance. And it was that really at that point, I started to really focus down on the world of finance, but also the world of small businesses. So that was really my launch. So I didn't have a pathway that was really focused on finance until I really had this kind of light bulb moment about the importance of doing economics and really understanding economics. And that then fortunately led me to be able to have a very close look at the world of small business and entrepreneurship.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Well, it wasn't a straightforward line, which in fact, I think people who take a really straightforward line may not always get to where they want to be.
Yeah, totally agree. So taking us to the beginning of your investment journey, how did it go from London School of Economics, doing the masters, into angel investing? What sparked the passion to move into that space? How did that begin? Very
interesting opportunity for me, because I soon realized that my best route was actually to set up my own business. And I realized that my biggest interest was that so many small businesses seem to understand very little about how to fund their business. And particularly at the time, because again, this was the time where we were very full partners in the European Union, didn't understand the amazing opportunities that were available through European funding. So I set up a whole strategic consultancy, which was advising entrepreneurs how to use public funding, both from the UK and Europe, to build and grow their business and really use that alongside their own objectives to build businesses. And this, by chance, led me to come across the world of angel investing. And I have to say, it was an absolute light bulb moment, because I'd always assumed you needed public money always, whether it was grants or loans, or you needed bank money. And I realized there was this huge world of people out there who were putting their own money behind small businesses. And I had the great opportunity to be introduced to London Business Angels as part of my work, and began working with them and understanding the world of angel investing. And then, of course, met entrepreneurs who were pitching for private investment, and met this group of amazing people who were putting their own money behind entrepreneurs. And it was that realization that actually there's an absolute bottomless pool of these people, because they were all out there. All they needed to do was to know about it, to have the opportunity to meet entrepreneurs and to be mobilized into groups. And at that time, London Business Angels, and there were probably a very few angel groups. It was one of the very earliest ones. But I learned so much about the whole approach to that. And really, I just embraced it from then. I started angel investing myself, and I started wanting to really understand it better. So that was it was, completely serendipity, really. I think I would have continued to run my consultancy, which was both in London and Brussels, really focused on kind of European and UK public money, had I not come across this amazing pool of angel investment.
So some of our listeners who might not be aware of what angel investment or angel investing actually is, their only experience might be watching Dragon's Den or Shark Tank or something like that. Can you give us an insight into what angel investing or angel investment actually is, what that looks like, and what the kind of thresholds are for entrepreneurs that are coming into this that are going to give up some equity, and what that equity should look like?
Thank you, Ben. It's really important to understand about angel investing because it's probably the most significant source of early stage investment. In other words, if you're a startup business, you wouldn't be able to get venture capital. You're most certainly unlikely to be looked at by banks. So angel investment is that very first piece of money that you might have in your business that is not a loan, not a grant, but is what we call equity. And that really means that in return for some investment, you give away some shares in your business. And unlike venture capital, which is a fund, and you go there and you're looked at in terms of the fund being able to invest in you. This is individuals who use probably about between 10 and 15% of their own spare wealth. Many of them having had great business backgrounds themselves, or having been entrepreneurs, or they could have been professionals, but who've made enough money to be able to put some of that aside and put it into entrepreneurs, and generally because they're really passionate about small businesses and often want to put something back into the economy. I'll say a bit more about that in a moment because we don't have enough women doing this, I will say in a moment. But it's really a great source if you really want to grow your business. So the big issue is why would you give away some shares? It's because with that money, you can turbocharge your business. Because if you're dependent on sales and dependent on making your own revenue, that takes a very long time to build and grow on that basis. So if you can get some investment behind your business, then that allows you to use that money to build your business, to hire more people, and to develop your markets and your customers and your growth. And you have an interesting relationship with an angel because unlike venture capital, they're actually taking the same kinds of shares in the business that you are. So you're really aligned. And the aim of the angel is not just to give you money, but to also give you advice, help, support, connections, introductions. So it's a unique source, which is really about, which is very kind of, sounds like very one and on and very, very intense. But actually, it's about people who want to help you grow. But out of that, if your business is successful, they will get a return. So it's kind of win-win on both sides if it works. And the kind of investment that I was just talking about when I was first of all talking about London Business Angels and angel groups is one of the best ways that angels do it is through a syndicate working together in a group and bringing their own collective money together behind entrepreneurs. And obviously, therefore, you get access to more skills, more help, more support. So it often sounds quite scary, but actually it's really a relationship between yourself and an investor who really, generally, really cares about you. And overall, the good ones will not interfere too much in your business. They will want you to grow, but they can see that the money will incentivize that growth. And so they will expect to see you're growing your business. And if it goes well, they'll give you some more. But if you just think about what kind of money you might be looking for at that stage, I think the important thing is to bear in mind this is very early stage. So we're talking about you may be looking for between maybe 50K to 500K. And I would say in the early stage, you may, if you're looking for much less than that, that's probably just an individual angel. But ideally, you should maybe look at grants before that. Once you're starting using 50 to 100K in your business, then you can start to plan the growth. So you need to be kind of thinking of approaching angel money as a piece of money that will start to really take you on that growth journey. And is not when you've just got a piece of paper with an idea. It's not just when you're just kind of thinking of how you are going to build that business, but where you've built enough of the business to kind of show it, demonstrate its really growth potential, and where you can show that this would work. If I gave you some money that I know that you could build that, find your customers, start to take it to market, and really can start to see the visible business growing. So you've got to be at the point where you've beta tested, you've even perhaps found people who might be interested in wanting to buy it, and where you've got a strong sense of, if I had that money, where it could go.
Makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really comprehensive explanation as to what angel investing looks like. But with it being so high risk and high reward, obviously, what drives you to continue championing entrepreneurs, especially in such a unpredictable environment and time that we're in at the moment?
I think for me, it was always that issue that I knew how hard it was for entrepreneurs to find that money, to find those individuals. And it was really when I was starting to kind of build this concept of how do we get more people to be business angels like myself and like others, that I realized how challenging it was. And interestingly, this was at the time of the last financial crisis. For anyone who can remember this, in 2008-9, the banks all failed. And globally, we had a massive financial crisis. You know, it's hard to believe it was 10 years before the pandemic, for example. But we had this massive crisis. And for entrepreneurs, it was a disaster because the banks stopped lending any money. And, you know, it was just really, really difficult time. And it was also a time when we needed so more of those private investors to come up and step up to the plate and do this. So I was very fortunate in that we decided to set up UK Business Angels Association, and the government at the same time, and people who will remember David Cameron, the man who took us out of Brexit, but actually did do some good stuff at the time. And he came in 2010-11, and he recognised the need to give a really big support to entrepreneurship, but also to really give support to encourage more people to invest. And he did kind of two things. He brought us all into number 10, and he said, your country needs you. We need you to back entrepreneurs, and we're giving you an increased tax break, which we can say a bit more about in due course, which was the Enterprise Investment Scheme and then became the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. So we were going to give investors a much bigger tax break. We were putting co-investment funds on the table, he said, a new big fund to co-invest with angels. And we want you to go out and multiply and build many more angels. And so on the back of that, we got together and launched UK Business Angels Association. And I took on the role of CEO. And really at that time, really angels were very dispersed. And if you were an entrepreneur, it was very, very hard to find them. So our role was to make that angel investment visible and make a pathway for entrepreneurs to find investors. So I built the organization with that really aim in mind, that entrepreneurs can find investors can find great entrepreneurs, and that we build an ecosystem of people around that want to help and support entrepreneurs to find investment and give them the advice and help they needed. And that we also gave many more individuals out there the opportunity, understanding, knowledge and education to become angel investors themselves and to mobilize into groups. And so that's really, been my passion, really entrepreneurs need to find that investment. It's not hard, it's not hard once you've found it, but it's jolly hard to just at a starting point know where to find those investors. So once you can give it an identity, where people are, build them into groups, give them a name. We set up a big directory so that you could search for them, and to really create an environment where as entrepreneurs you could pitch, speak to investors, and really make that go. Still a long way to go, and we can talk more about that in a moment. But it was really just creating an infrastructure and creating the means for great entrepreneurs who otherwise, particularly as a result of the crisis, not been able to get any of that funding they needed, to really connect them up with people who had money and really wanted to use that money to back entrepreneurs.
Yeah. You've mentioned that, you wanted to work to provide the education and the knowledge for entrepreneurs so that they could become investment ready. What do you believe are the most crucial qualities that makes an entrepreneur investable?
I think there's really important areas to consider, and particularly as a creative entrepreneur, one of the biggest things that you have to be able to do with an investor is to convince them that your business will grow and hopefully become a success, because it's putting money behind you, boosting that growth, which then enables you to expand, grow, and scale. And then ideally, you will then create a lot more money and, ultimately may even find someone who might buy your business. But that really then releases capital then that angels can access too. So we're looking for a return on our investment. And the reason we want that is because we want to recycle that money. So the idea, first of all, is building a business that is not just niche and not just one that you want to love and hold on to and never leave, which could be the case, and in which case you shouldn't be looking for investment. But if you have a business where you have the ambition to grow it and scale it, and you feel you found a real opportunity to be able to sell your product, to find customers, find buyers, and really create growth and create money on the back of that, then that is really the main rationale. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about also building a business around yourself. As an individual, that's tough. If you are just an individual artist or entrepreneur, it's much harder for you to be building a business around that and to make that investable. So to be investable, you need a structure where you can employ people or grow your team, and where you can create a product or a technology that has the potential to sell. If it's all about you, and for many it is, you're an entity rather than a business, and you need to grow a business. And ideally be more than yourself, even if you have something really wonderful that you've created. So, it's visibility, something demonstrable, something where we can see if we put our money behind it, you can build it, grow it, make it a success, give me a return.
That makes perfect sense. So speaking of how you can go about making yourself more investable, providing a return for the angel, what are the common mistakes that entrepreneurs make when pitching to angel investors, and how can they avoid those mistakes?
I think when you think of it, you're standing up in front of a group of investors, and that's pretty daunting. I'll say a bit more in a moment about women entrepreneurs, because it's even especially more daunting when you stand up in front of a room that hasn't got enough women in it, or very few women and a lot of men. But it is daunting because that it's like the most serious job interview, because you're going for money that you need for your business. So that in itself is, creates a big sort of tension. The really great way to make a pitch is to show, first of all, your own passion, your own leadership, and why this business idea and its potential is important to you. Because if you are passionate behind this, if you've got the commitment to execute and build and grow a business around this, then we believe in much more in that business. So first of all, it's a lot about you and a lot about how you can present yourself as someone who's kind of committed, passionate, serious, and has really the ambition to stay with it, build it, and grow it. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to be absolutely clear that we love start off, you may not. So we actually do want to know why you've set up that business. What was it behind it that drove you? Not because you woke up one day and had a light bulb moment and thought, I'll create this wonderful product. But actually because there was a reason that drove you. You could see a niche, you could see an opportunity in the market. So really what drives you is really something where you can see a need, an opportunity, a challenge, and where you can take that and build something new and special around it. So the third thing, therefore, is how is it different? How is it innovative? How is it disruptive? How does it look compared with other things in the market that are out there? And how can you really differentiate from other products, other services that might be out there? So a fourth thing you really need to think about is, do I understand my market? Have I done market research that really shows that my product, my service, my opportunity will actually be needed, wanted, and adopted in the market, and that there is a customer, well, not just one, there are many customers out there who would be hopefully in due course prepared to pay for it. And remember, when you may start off, you may not be making any revenue at all, but it's that revenue potential that you want to be able to show. And the fifth thing you need to think about, therefore, and I mentioned it already, is who are my competitors? Do I know them? How do I differentiate from them? What's really different and exciting about my business that's going to keep me in front and help me build a competitive, defensible position in the market, whereby other competition or other similar products or ideas, of course, they're always going to be coming along, but where you personally know that your business is exciting, really interesting out there and in front. Knowing also that often as a creative founder, it's very hard to kind of patent it or, protect your IP. But your talent, your skills, having first mover advantage and being able to really build an exciting brand or opportunity around that is really what you're looking to sell. And you can tell by this that one of the things you really can have to show in all this passion is that you can drive that forward, build it, scale it, and you're not going to just sit back and hope that it will go somewhere, but you'll be constantly on it and driving it forward. And then really then being able to then identify to an investor why their investment is needed. That if they gave you an amount of investment in return for some shares in your business, that you would use that money effectively to build and grow your business. So what do you need the money for? How will you spend it? And how will that take you to the next milestone? So that is about showing you've got a growth strategy. You really know where you want to take that business, and you can see how you can build it with their money, where you can take it. And you can show, hopefully, a bit of a financial plan where you can show you can take that forward. And then finally, and I have mentioned this, one of the things often is that you're very passionate about your business and you never want to give it away. You never want, and not give it away, but you never want to sell it. And the idea overall for investors, however much impact and exciting, excitement you can make in the market, in the end, the best way generally to get a return is actually for that business to be sold or acquired to another business, another customer, and ideally then you will get some money back. You would get hopefully a great money back for all the time and effort you've spent on that, and the investor will then get money back, which they can then go on and build and grow another small business. And hopefully you'll go on and create another great business as well as an entrepreneur. So it's that sense of sort of, there is a journey that you're going to take the investor on, but at the end of it, you do foresee the opportunity for an exit. And if you feel that's unpalatable to you, you can set up as a business that doesn't ever sell, but it will be very unlikely that an investor would come on that journey with you, just because they can't see the end game for them. And everyone as an investor is dependent on making a return and then using the outcomes of that money to build more great entrepreneurs.
So with regards to the entrepreneur and the investor, there needs to be a strong relationship. How can you offer any advice for maintaining that relationship and making sure that the relationship is productive between both parties, the entrepreneur and the investor? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because often people think the money's the main thing, let's get the money in and then let's move on. And actually, there is a huge opportunity to gain a lot of added value from having investors in your business. It's not, it's not just the money that they're bringing you, but those people have huge amount of business experience. They have a huge amount of knowledge and insight. Many of them themselves, if you've got the right investors, would be also looking into the industry and knowing key people in the industry that they could introduce you to, customers, helping you with links, giving you strategic advice because they themselves have built business, and linking you to other key useful people. So you've got all of that opportunity, and then in return, often there's a need for some kind of structure around that. So generally, you would be creating some kind of board at that point, and an investor may well want to take a role on that board. So being a non-exec director. By the way, you don't need to pay them for that role. It's not a paid role. This is all part of the investor relationship. But you do often have the value of those people on your board and part of governance. The other part of it is, for your investors, they also want to understand the progress you're making. So you totally will need to be ready to share the finances, the progress your business is taking on a regular basis. So, doing regular reports and updates to investors, but remembering also that that's also an important relationship to have, to show when you can see you're in trouble. You see issues that are arising where you need help. And one of the big things angels want is for you to tell them that you've got an issue, not wait for it to kind of fester and bring the business down. And so always making sure that when you've got an issue, and it may be just things about building your business, from hiring more team to markets, etc., reach out, get them to support you and help you. But we don't really encourage investors to spend a lot of time in your business. You're running the business. They want you to run it. They've given you money to go and do it and build it, but they do want to help and support, come in and help shoot trouble. And the other main thing you need to think about investors is, this could just be the first piece of investment you have in your business. You may need further rounds to build and grow it. So first of all, you need angels to be on your side, hopefully to give you another round of money as you start to grow. But also, they know other great investors and other sources of finance. So they will help you on your journey to building your position to perhaps take on venture capital or other further growth money. So the whole opportunity of having an investor with you is not just to give you the money, but to give you all those contacts, links, and help you. They nurture your business, help you build it. And ideally, it's, we sometimes say it's like a bit like a marriage. You're having a long-term relationship with them, but hopefully really, really productive and really helping you on that growth journey.
And just touching on what you said there about you might need to go back for some more money. What does that look like in terms of the equity stake that you might give up in your company in order to bring that angel on? Because, when you watch Dragon's Den, you might see Peter Jones. He says, I want 49% of your company for £100,000. That doesn't really leave much space for further investment. What is the kind of figure that an entrepreneur should be looking at the top end if they're coming to an angel for their first set of investment?
No, that's a really important question, Ben. I mean, most importantly, you should not be giving away a lot of your equity in those early phases. And I have to say, Dragon's Den, it's really, really not how it is. There are a lot of checks and balances around that. Ideally, you shouldn't be giving away more than 10 to 15% of equity in a first round. And angels are not there to take great chunks of your money. That's not their interest. I mean, their interest is to give you money that helps to incentivize you to build and grow. Because obviously, if you start to not have control of your business, because there's more people own the equity than the equity you have, then obviously that becomes much less of an incentive to you to want to build and grow. But also giving away small amounts of equity because of the very point we've just made, you will take on further rounds potentially of investment as you go along. And so ultimately you will be giving some more equity away each time. Just bearing in mind, you need 50% of your business at least to keep control. So, this is where you have to bear that in mind. And if an investor comes along and wants to take on a big piece of equity and we're giving you a small amount of money, as you just mentioned with Dragon's Den, do not do it. It's not worth it. You need to think of that because you'll have nothing else for further rounds, or you will end up losing control very early. And I do meet entrepreneurs that this has happened to them, in ignorance on their side, quite understandably, and where they've been definitely taken advantage of. And this is not how it should be. That's not angel investing. Angel investing is there, as I said, to give you launch pad to grow, but don't need control over your business.
I just want to talk to you about diversity and inclusion in investment. You've been a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. You've championed female founders and female investors. You've been an advocate for investment outside of London, across the regions and in the nations across the UK, and also for more diversity in terms of ethnic angels and for ethnic entrepreneurs. How important is it for the investment landscape to evolve? And what steps have you taken to try and make this happen?
No, thanks very much. It is an ongoing issue. I mean, it's totally systemic that, it's been much, much harder if you're a female entrepreneur or female team, or if you come from a Black or ethnic minority or other areas, from disability, gay, so many areas have held entrepreneurs back. And really, there have been a lot of issues around that. I mean, some of it you would say could be attributed to, a lack of education and support and knowledge of those opportunities for entrepreneurs, and that lacking people to guide them and give them that help and support. But there is a definite evidence that shows that investors, particularly in the past, have not easily given away investment to women-led businesses or to Black and ethnic minority-led businesses. And it is not just about them not being in the pipeline. It's because there have been genuine challenges in investors wanting to invest in the image of themselves and people they know and trust in that they have, that seem to be like them. So we have obviously two issues. One is, if you are a Black or ethnic minority entrepreneur or a woman entrepreneur, and traditionally you would stood up in front of investors, they would have been white male mainly, and that's angel groups who were building groups around themselves as colleagues and friends. So what we obviously then realize that there are many entrepreneurs failing to access investment, and the stats were very, very stark when looked into, where only 1 or 2% of investment at VC level was going to female-led businesses, and less than 1% going to ethnic minority-led teams. We came up with those figures way back in 2018-19 when everyone began to realize this is a massive challenge. For me, I could see it all along because I knew I could not see enough women in the pipeline, but I also couldn't see enough women like me investing. And so I was fortunate in being invited to be part of the Rose Review Board, which was based on a massive, important, significant piece of research which identified these issues and challenges. But also it gave me a sort of platform to be able to do more. And I set up the Women Backing Women campaign, but I also set up a very strong campaign about building more diversity in angel investment. And if you look at the stats in terms of the investors, this is where it's a stark reality, because we had some great research done by powerhouse, and we discovered there are only 14% of all angels are women. And powerhouse found over 37,000 angels in total, only 5,000 women, only 14% of those. And if you look at the few stats we have, less than 11% of the investment population were Black or ethnic minority individuals. So you could see the impact of, if you have so few people within the investment base, such a lack of diversity, then that naturally played out in terms of who got investment, who was in the pipeline, who was making the decisions, and what were the outcomes for those individuals. So we've been working, on this. And I also recognize that, and this is why it's important, that I knew that women who were investing, that many of us were backing a very strong number of women entrepreneurs. It was natural to us to do this. And so clearly also same for Black and ethnic minority investors. So we needed to build more investors within the investment base who would, repopulate and, diversify the whole investment base and be part of that pipeline making and decision making, so that they would recognize the merits and opportunities of women founders, Black and ethnic minority founders, and people from wider, less represented groups. So we've got that real opportunity now to continue that, and we've been working on it for some time, and we can see the results. And I've set some major targets now where I want to see 30% of the whole investment community as women, and that's only a starting point. It should be more, and equally for Black and ethnic minority investors. And I know not everyone feels they can invest, but actually to be an angel, just to be clear for anyone listening, you don't need a lot of money. You don't have to be rich. You can be putting anything from 2K in a deal as part of a syndicate. And the government gives amazing tax breaks under the enterprise investment scheme and seed enterprise investment scheme, meaning that between 30 and 50% of the money you put into great entrepreneurs, you get back from the government. And I'll just a quick plug to say that now the European Commission has agreed that the EIS scheme and SEIS schemes can continue now until 2035. So as an entrepreneur, you have this amazing gift that you can give to an investor who invests in you and backs you, that they will get a huge piece of their money back, as well as capital gains tax deferred. But you, as an entrepreneur, can really gain from that. So we want a lot more awareness and education among people who haven't thought of investing themselves, who come from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, who have a broader demographic entirely, and also women, of course, because so many women could be doing this. And then you did touch on one other final part, and that is we need to also bear in mind that 60% of angel investing and early stage investing generally is going to entrepreneurs who live in London and what we call the Golden Triangle, London, Oxford, Cambridge. And we can see that there's a huge raft of the most amazing entrepreneurs from all backgrounds who are out there in the regions who are still finding it extremely difficult to access investment, because we don't have enough investors and enough pools of investment outside in the regions. Scotland, interestingly, has done a great deal more than that, for the fact they've had a very strong government support through co-investment funds. But in most regions, it's still very tough. So we're working hard also with people like the British Business Bank and government, but also people who want to take leadership in this, great women and great Black and ethnic minority entrepreneurs and investors like yourself, to really push out both knowledge, awareness and opportunity and create that much bigger pool of investment out in the regions, so that wherever you are in the UK and whatever your background, you can find that investment you need and really build and grow amazing businesses.
So if I'm a Black or ethnic person that has £2,000 or more that I want to put in something, or if I'm a woman, or if I'm someone in the regions and I want to do that, how do I go about getting started? How do I get into angel investing?
No, thanks. I mean, it's often difficult to get started and difficult to know where to start. So at UKBAA, we have built a real huge raft of resources. If anyone wants to go to our website, it's very, very simple. Just www.ukbaa.org.uk. But we have a huge raft of information, advice and education, and there are a lot of education materials that you can access. The other part of it is really not just about self-learning, but also being part of a group. So we have over 106 angel groups across the UK, all with different characteristics. But we can also link you in to a group. So you definitely need to consider joining a group. And also just bearing in mind that lots of those groups also give a lot of education, a lot of support and advice and help as to how to be, a good angel investor, and working alongside others too who are investing, which kind of really gives you a kind of mentorship and support as well. And I think it's really worth bearing in mind that we don't encourage you to do it on your own, just because it's hard. Also, it's an incredibly social thing to do. It's really wonderful to be part of a syndicate, sharing knowledge. Also, you're pooling the risks. I mean, you offset the risks between you by sharing knowledge, but also you're not putting all your money into one entrepreneur. You're building a portfolio. So all of that you gain from being part of an angel group. I will say, I think we can definitely do with many more angel groups, and I would encourage any group of people who come forward who are like-minded from whatever your background to think of, do we have the kind of, are we interested in kind of forming our own syndicate? And we can form them around, topics and sectors as well as regions, and obviously thinking of you, Ben, because you've seen the light in setting up a syndicate, around independent music, because you've recognised the power of bringing people together and collectively helping people to invest and find, great entrepreneurs and deal flow within independent music sector. So I think it's totally worth bearing in mind that UKBAA is there to help. We run a lot of support and education programs, but actually being part of a syndicate or group is really the very best way to do that. And actually, as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to find individuals. I mean, they tend to not advertise themselves in that way. But by approaching through UKBAA, but generally through the community, you will find syndicates who themselves have a front door and a pathway where you can, apply to pitch and be seen and understood the opportunity within your business. So it's definitely worth, as an entrepreneur, looking for angels in groups, for angel syndication, where they can bring you a bigger pile of money between them, but also it really makes that access point much, much easier for you.
You touched on, obviously, the syndicate that I've been working on for the music industry, where you've been providing immense support. So thank you for that. What would you say is the difference between entrepreneurs from a music or creative background to those who are coming from other industries and other sectors?
I think I've touched on a few points, Ben, when I've talked about creative entrepreneurs. And often, as I've said, it's often about how you build an effective business around a creative idea or a creative inspiration or your own, because a lot of it's about your own knowledge, your own talents. And so one of the big things to remember, if you are backing creative entrepreneurs is they may not yet have built a very strong business and team around them. So one of the things as an investor, you're looking at is, do you as an entrepreneur have the will and ambition to build a business around you and build that opportunity through creating a team? And therefore, that means you taking leadership and starting to really understand your power, not just as a great creative entrepreneur, but also, as a business, and taking leadership. And that also is about you as an entrepreneur, creative entrepreneur. Often it's not obvious to you about really not obvious, to the entrepreneur, to not just the entrepreneur, but to the investor about how you make money.
Yeah.
So a lot of the issue around creative entrepreneur, particularly music, is what are the business models that underpin the business that helps it to create revenue and create its commercial viability. And so I think it kind of works both sides. First of all, I think we need to kind of have probably more clear education for investors themselves about the business models and structures that surround the development of, say, music businesses. And, what is their exit potential? What is their growth potential? We need more stories and information about successful businesses and having an understanding of their growth multiples or their exit stories. Because otherwise, investors approach this and say, I can't see the pathway from putting my money behind a creative entrepreneur to building a successful business, to creating its commercial viability and its growth and someone wanting to buy it or having an exit. So a lot of it is actually, as for entrepreneurs, is first of all building that credibility around, I know the kind of business I'm going to build. I understand how to make money. I can see where the revenue streams are, and I can see how I can make that grow. And I understand what I need to make that grow. So there's a kind of education on both sides there, which is the entrepreneur understanding, in getting inside the head of an investor and seeing what we look for, which is in some ways is a bit more conventional in terms of how we think businesses are structured and how we think they would grow and what is it that creates commercial viability and ultimate success. And as an entrepreneur, you probably do know your industry very well, but have you thought that you really can show and demonstrate that desire and scale, opportunity to scale? And then I think the other part of it is really your talents are huge and your story is hugely, tremendously important and exciting because it's you. And so I think the biggest thing that creative entrepreneurs can do is build their own personal credibility in terms of both telling their story in a meaningful way that people understand your creativity, your inspiration, your innovation, and that you also have, which is, I've commonly used the word flaky and all those kind of stupid words, but that people need to understand that creatives can be great business people and can build and grow great companies. So that needs, probably in the industry, more case studies, more data, more examples, and more kind of information out there that investors can access. And then I think finally is really about, interestingly, how far as an entrepreneur and a creative entrepreneur are you embracing technology? And the reason I say that is because so many investors are pretty obsessed about technology. They see often that the source of growth, they see that often the source of opportunity and IP. And I think in most ways, most creatives are using technology in so many ways, but often fail to kind of convey that technological part of their business, almost assuming that we've understood there's a strong technology part of it, or that they are using, all kinds of aspects of technology, many even embracing AI and, et cetera, deep tech, but also how you're using it just to support your business model and growth. And I think there's a need to show you understand tech and you understand how creativity and technology come together to create innovative, disruptive, great businesses. And you totally get that, and you can convey that. And that's another light bulb moment for investors to understand that. And if you don't have technology, then you definitely have, innovation. And those two words, creativity, innovation, and the use of technology, I think do need to be up there as part of your pitch and part of your story and part of your strategy for growth.
For a lot of creative entrepreneurs, especially in music, their passion was, I love music, I just want to make a great record, or, I want to support my friend. And through doing so, they create a business.
Yes.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
Then they get to a point where they're like, I want to scale this, I want to make this bigger, I want to take this somewhere. And for a lot of people in the music industry that are coming from a working class background or low socioeconomic background, or as you've mentioned, there might be female identifying, or coming from an ethnic background, they start to look into it, and then the language kind of puts them off, for the access, finding those networks, finding those angels, even the knowledge, understanding what it is that's in front of them. What should someone like that do to overcome those barriers? I think the British Business Bank made that comment that the biggest barriers for people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, access to knowledge, capital, and networks. So what should someone coming from those backgrounds do to overcome those barriers?
Yeah, I think those are, those continue to be very, very important issues for people. And I definitely think, in fact, not having access to kind of an entrepreneurial background is often, very significant for many entrepreneurs, by the way. But particularly where also one of the big areas that you'll see that's often behind a lot of entrepreneurs that have been successful, and I'm particularly talking about white male entrepreneurs too, which is that they have had access to early finance. They've had money to help them really go on that first wave of building a business and growth. So they've not only had access, to people who have kind of information and kind of inside knowledge about entrepreneurship, but often have been able to access some early investment as well. Whilst if you don't and you don't come from that kind of background, then obviously having access to those networks, but also access to some very early stage finance is also very important, and is much more challenging if you don't. So I think one of the big things about it is actually joining accelerator programs. You absolutely do need to join anything that gives you education, but also gives you links, contacts, and partnerships. So the kind of role you've been playing as well with your program, Ben, has been really, really important in giving people access to outside knowledge, to people who understand entrepreneurship and investment, but also linking them to into groups and networks. I think there is a big role for acceleration. I also think that, genuinely joining any kind of network is really, really important. So you need to be able to have those links and partnerships and contacts. I do believe once you get as far as angels, then often that's the opening door for you in themselves, in that it will give you links and contacts and networks. But I think it is beholden to all of us who are working out there to give links to entrepreneurs. And one thing I'm absolutely passionate about is that we always share knowledge. So, I think me and all my fellow investors that I know are always helping introduce people, give them links, referrals to other investors or to other programs or opportunities. So I think you have to a degree, and I know that's hard, but I think, you should feel free to kind of reach out to people and get links. I would also go to as many events as you can. because not all pitching events are closed. Lots of pitching events are open, and going to lots of kind of contacts and meetings and things where you can informally interact with investors. And I think those are, those are very important opportunities too. Anything that kind of builds your knowledge and contacts. But I will say, increasingly, we used to always only depend as angels and investors on what we call warm referrals, where you needed to do that. But I think that all of the angel groups that we are working with now, particularly those who are really keen on building their diversity and their gender diversity, are having a lot more open opportunities to go and talk to them, open office hours, looking at cold deals, not dependent on them coming from a trusted source. So I think that's something to bear in mind, that you can go on a website like UKBAA and you can make applications into those angel groups. And for anyone who's a woman listening as well, worth bearing in mind that we have something called the Investing in Women Code, which was an initiative that was set up in 2019, but where we encourage angel groups, VCs and banks to sign the code and deliberately take action to open up their doors to women entrepreneurs.
That's
and we've
amazing.
really seen the impact of that in terms of the level of deal flow that's coming through those groups as signatories. And remember, they all have they have a flag on their website saying, I am a signatory in the Investing in Women Code. So it's good to know about. We haven't done that yet with Black and ethnic minorities. And I will say, and for anyone who's looking out there are still fewer groups that are actually being led and run by majority Black and ethnic minority founders. But we do know that there is so much more openness in our community now to that. But I think it's very important to not feel that this is a closed door or a closed community. Yeah. I think we have to get past that saying that I don't know anybody, so I can't join, I can't be part of it. I mean, we are opening up the doors, still got a long way to go, but you should feel that you can, approach particularly any angel groups now to just say, here's my business. Many of them may have a pro forma that you fill in, but the ideal thing is a nice short executive summary and a really neat, pitch point deck to show people and get that first meeting.
And the first step is visiting your website.
I would definitely suggest that, Ben. I would say visit our website, and also do look out for so many great accelerator programs, including yours, that many of whom are sector focused or really focused on having a very diverse range of players and really want to give support and mentorship. I'm very much a believer in them.
Over the last few years, I think with social media especially, entrepreneurship has become very, very sexy. It's become very aspirational. It's become the thing that people are kind of leaning towards more so than working for somebody. Do you think that the way that entrepreneurship is projected at the moment is fair and is, you see people kind of driving the Lamborghinis and they're like, I made this much money this quickly. How do you feel entrepreneurship is being projected at this moment in time to young people and to people that are finding their way in their careers?
I mean, I totally recognize, what you're saying. And, we see it as a key to success. I mean, everyone who's been an entrepreneur will know it's blooming hard work and it's actually tough. And, one of the biggest issues is that only a few will really, get through and have that, make that kind of money. I will say to anyone who has made a lot of money, though, as an entrepreneur, please be an angel as well. In other words, make sure you reuse that money. Don't just drive off in your Lamborghini. But do, and so many of the great entrepreneurs have gone on to become really significant angel investors or set up their own funds. and really see the opportunity to put money back as well. So for any successful entrepreneurs, please do that. For anyone thinking of being an entrepreneur, also please build it into your plan to be, to use your success ultimately, some of that success, successful money to put back into entrepreneurs, and consider, yourself to become an angel in due course. But overall, I mean, it's worth bearing in mind, as I said, entrepreneurship's hard work. There's a lot of failures along the way. And we are, in the UK, less good than the US at accepting failure, although I think increasingly we're much better at it. But it is important to bear in mind it's a very long journey, that lots of things can happen along the way, and much of it not in control. I mean, think of the pandemic. No one saw that coming, and think what that did to so many entrepreneurs and great businesses that failed. So one of the big things, of course, when thinking of this is saying you do need to build in not just a real love and desire for success, but bearing in mind, resilience, bearing in mind that you will need to potentially pivot and change your business business model as you go along, and you will need to adapt to change. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that the image of entrepreneurship is really great when I think that it was not considered to be your aim or ambition in life. I think now we absolutely admire and encourage people, and I'm really pleased to see more programs going on in schools, and generally universities, and I said the proliferation of accelerators, all of them designed to help people embrace their entrepreneurial instincts. And by the way, it's not just about young people, as you know. People can do this at all ages, and this is why backgrounds and age, none of this matters now, because we all rate entrepreneurship, and we know how important it is to our economy. I mean, it's so huge to our economy, which is obviously why we the government gives it so much support. But I think I would say is the most important thing you can do in being an entrepreneur is actually consider really not just how great and cool the money you're making is, but how far are you really making an impact on really important challenges. Because actually you could say, well, does music? Well, it does, because it addresses so many social needs. It's so much about well-being and health, and so much obviously about community and so on, and not to mention the fact of how important creativity is to our lives. But I think it's really important to bear in mind that even if you don't make all that piles of money, that entrepreneurs are doing such great things across the country. And I mean, that's why I'm absolutely passionate about entrepreneurship and people thinking of how they can use their talents, their creativity, their ideas, their interests to start and grow and build a business, and making sure that they take advantage of the help around them, but also understanding the vital opportunity that investment might bring to you too in that plan. So I would say, yes, be an entrepreneur, be a creative entrepreneur, create impact, create something really exciting and wonderful. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, do it again, because that's the other great thing about it, is just, the entrepreneurial spirit, making sure, but also, as I said, and if you are successful in all that, do make sure you become an angel as well.
Speaking of successes and sometimes things not working, failures can be super significant in your journey. Can you share a story about a time when you went into an investment and things didn't go as planned? And can you explain what you learned from that experience?
Yes, thank you. It's always a tricky one to talk about failures, but as angels, we have quite a lot of them. And I will say to anyone considering angel investing, do bear in mind that we only a very small percentage of them will actually go on and be a success. And I will just say, before I talk about the absolute failures, actually what actually happens to most businesses is they don't fail. They don't actually fail. They don't disappear. They become what we call zombies. So it's terrible terminology, meaning that they are just ticking along, but they're not growing, and they're not actually entirely failing, but they've not achieved all that they had hoped. And you, as an angel, have quite a lot of those in your portfolio. So this is really where it starts. So first of all, as an investor, you start by being, first of all, very optimistic. And you have to be optimistic, or you wouldn't do it, because you believe that everyone that you back is going to be a great success. So the things that have enticed me, and I'll speak about particularly as well, but often, first of all, I mentioned a lot about the entrepreneur. So for me, and most angels, we are extremely focused on the entrepreneur and believing in that entrepreneur, and it's what that entrepreneur kind of tells us about the potential success of the business is what we ultimately are backing. And we do due diligence, but it's not as deep or wide as VCs. But at the back of it, your gut tells you about whether or not you think you believe in that entrepreneur and that entrepreneur can execute and build the business. So one of the difficulties is that not all entrepreneurs turn out to be, what you kind of hoped they would be.
Yeah.
It was in my kind of earlier days when I absolutely, was completely hooked by the idea of an entrepreneur that was, interestingly, it was a creative business. It was a very interesting kind of jewelry chain that they were setting up, and they had achieved so much, but I had no idea that actually they were not only a fantastic entrepreneur and had so much going for them, but they were actually running another business as well on the side. And one of the things I have to say, my first story is making sure, first as an investment, most of all as an entrepreneur, are you absolutely dedicated and focused to making that business work? Or are you hedging your bets, doing sort of several other things? Because to be honest, I learned so much from that, which was make sure that entrepreneur is full-time on the business and really, really focused on that. So I learned that, first of all, they were running another business, and that also that they had got huge debts, which again, I had failed to pick up. They got huge debts in the other business.
Personal debts or business debts?
Well, they were a bit of both. But the thing is, what happens, as you know, again, a lesson to know, is if you do take a loan out, whether it's from a kind of, private loan or a bank, or, or you've been given one any other way, that takes precedence over, over anything else. So you have to pay back the loan, or they will come after you and take your business, take your business. And now we have much better guarantees from banks even, but they didn't used to exist. So this entrepreneur, who I still think had huge potential, but she had opened up her jewelry business and was doing quite well on that to a degree, but she had massive loans to pay off on her other business, which was taking more and more of her time and more and more of her money. So one of the things to bear in mind is you as an entrepreneur have to be absolutely upfront and clear with your investors that you are committed and focused to that you will be keeping in very close touch with your investors, and also showing them when have trouble and difficulties, but being absolutely clear, on your ambition, and that you are focused on that particular business. Because that relationship, of course, then completely breaks down when you feel that you are in a situation of mistrust or lack of knowledge, because it all depends on that. So I learned a lot from, and I always say this to everyone, do a lot of due diligence on the entrepreneur. You really take them with them. They are going to be the key person. If they, if anything happens with them, then the business you thought you backed will not have the same leadership. So I learned a lot from backing the wrong entrepreneur, but at the same time being still quite convinced that the business could have been good if she'd actually, really focused on it. There are many examples that I could say, but I think along the way we learn every time. And being an investor, you're constantly learning, just as you are as an entrepreneur. But I would, as an entrepreneur, always listen to investors' stories, because they will tell you the things that went wrong, and you'll have to say to yourself, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that.
You're awarded an OBE for your services to entrepreneurs. How did it feel to receive such an honor, both that recognition from a personal and a professional point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely mind-blowing. It was a really, really special moment. And, you get the message that you're going to be given this honor and you're allowed
I
to...
don't know because I haven't had one yet, Jenny.
Then when you get the message, you're asked if you want to receive it or not, because obviously, so you have to do that. And then you're told you mustn't say anything to anybody until, it's announced. So you get that a couple of months before. And I kind of oh, wow. Oh, it's amazing. I kind of put it away, kind of had almost forgotten about it. And then, of course, you're announced publicly because it's announced, like this was the New Year honours. So it's announced. So again, everyone then kind of, then comes towards you and congratulates you, which is wonderful. I also had quite a few people write me a note saying, well, why didn't so-and-so get one then?
Oh, that's not very nice.
That's great, thanks. It's always good. There's always a few. But no, it was very, but I have to say it was the most wonderful occasion, going to Buckingham Palace, and I have my two children who were in their early 20s, and my husband. So it's a very proud moment. My daughter was swooning because I had Prince William give me my my medal and said lovely words, by the way. So that was all very exciting to be given that by the future king. But what it was really about for me, it was just that people recognise what you're doing, but actually, for me, since it's really been how can I live up to that? How I continue to merit that award. And it is it's a wonderful thing to have and have that recognition, but you have to keep deserving that recognition every day. So I am very, very conscious, and some people don't put the OBE bit or whatever on the end, but I've always done it, and it isn't just to show off; it's to remind me I've been recognised, and I need to deserve it. So I am continually, hopefully, striving and trying to always bring more value to what I'm doing.
Do you feel that's a pressure that you're putting on yourself to live up to that delivery constantly every day?
Well, I mean, obviously there's good days and bad days, aren't there, Ben? But it's I think it's very good to have, if you're going to take that award, if you're going to receive it and have it, then I think you do have to continue to merit it and deserve it, and also hopefully think you're putting other people on the pathway to gaining that recognition too, which is why I said one day, Ben, you will have that wonderful recognition too. But I think that it's a very, it is a privilege to be in that club. And it's been, wonderful to know that it was recognised. But overall, I would, you are what you are, and you live by what you do. So I hope I can continue to strive, and this is my passion. Entrepreneurship, making sure that great entrepreneurs can find the investment they need, and also, as I've been saying, those who have not had the fortune for this to be an easy pathway, that we can ensure that many more women, Black and ethnic minority, and other underrepresented founders can totally have that pathway to investment and success that they deserve.
Excellent. Looking ahead, what are your goals for UK Business Angels Association? How do you envision the organisation evolving over the coming years?
Yes, thank you. I mean, UKBAA, when I set it up, interestingly, there were about, I think it was 18 angel groups, and we now have over 106. So, continuing to build and grow more angel investors and more angel groups is, what's driving UKBAA. Continuing also, as I said, to make sure that's a diverse community is continuing to be a very serious driver, and continuing to make sure that we are building pools of angel investment capital right across the UK in all regions and all places that it can be accessed. So that will also remain a strong driver. It is an evolving thing, and that one of the things we've done at UKBAA, and I always did right from the outset, is actually building an ecosystem. So it isn't just angel investing doesn't really exist on its own. I mean, it's a pool of individuals, bring their money together. You have to build an ecosystem around it where it's a part of the long supply chain of equity investment. So angel investment is one of the first parts. There's also crowdfunding as well. It's part of that often early stage too. But you've got venture capital, you've got seed and pre-seed funds, then you've got growth capital, and then obviously going on to bigger funds, corporate funds, international funds, IPO. So angel is part of all of that. So you have to connect the dots all the time. And also we work as an organization with the players who represent all those different parts of the capital scene, from startup through to scale up, including public, key public agencies such as British Business Bank, Innovate UK, but also government, to make sure that that all hangs together and works successfully. And so at UKBAA, one of our increasing challenges is to make sure that we have the right, tax environment, the right regulatory environment, and so on, that continues to help angel investing grow. I mentioned the EIS and SEIS scheme, which is now going to be extended, which has become so important, and which was going to fall down next year. Yeah. So many of us have all been working on that. So we, all lobbying for that. So there is a continuing need to evolve. But also, if I look at, how it's structured, I'm seeing now the emergence of many more women-focused groups. So that's a great plus into the whole base. And obviously more and more, I want more women and more diverse investors to join, so we can continue to drive out diversity. And I think that will have a big change on UKBAA. The more we can achieve that, the better. And then finally, angel investing is kind of continuing evolving, and we're seeing it becoming more professional, more organized, less informal. And I think that's very important to see too, so that we can kind of strengthen the role of angel investing and the infrastructure around it, so that it withstand who knows what comes next down the pipeline, next crisis or pandemic or whatever. But what we want is angel investing to always be able to thrive and grow. And that means continuing to replace that pool of capital all the time with new people. We need more and more people to get it, to become aware, to become educated and knowledgeable how to do it, and to do it effectively. And we also want many more people, and this is coming back to you as well, we want more people with different backgrounds to join this. So we need more people from science and technology, but we also need so many more people from the arts. So if you think about it, and I mentioned earlier, one of the issues and challenges is the lack of knowledge for many of investors how to approach and support and invest in creative businesses, and especially music ones. We need many more people from the industry to see that opportunity to come forward and become angel investors. Because if we can build effective verticals around many of the key sectors, and especially all the subsectors of creative industries, then it will be so much easier to have that pool of investment effectively focused and targeted on entrepreneurs. So I do see there's a big role, not just to diversify investment, but also to kind of verticalize it to a degree and create much more strength then, not just among angel investing, but right across the supply chain, where you've got experts, knowledge, and real experience coming together behind entrepreneurship. I think that's a real opportunity for us to change the game through angel investing.
Finally, the concept of being unstoppable is central to this podcast, central to my life. For you, what does it mean to have an unstoppable mindset, and how's that played a role in your success?
I do think, being unstoppable is probably the kind of person that I've been that obviously will not be told no without that being a challenge. So I think one of the important things is actually to have self-belief. So, because people will always tell you can't do that. There's lots of things I kind of believed that I couldn't, and some of which I then found I couldn't. But overall, I think you have to have self-belief. You really do have to have resilience as well, because there's a lot of things will, come your way as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, whatever field you're in, that completely throw you off course. And I think actually having sort of focus is really important. In other words, you will get back on course or change if you need to change. So that ability to be adaptable and flexible, I think, is absolutely fine. So you can't just be on a straight pathway. It will never happen. Constantly things will come along, both globally, locally, personally, that will throw you. But I think if you have self-belief, but also that mindset that you can, get past obstacles that may need you have to go in a different direction or adapt or be flexible, I think that's very vital strategy to be unstoppable. And I think you have to have really ongoing commitment, and I mean it, in such a way that you are kind of living that commitment as much as you can. And again, things will stop you along the way. But I think kind of self-belief, ability adaptable, having a kind of strong personal kind of ethos and commitment, and recognizing that anything can happen is probably the kind of key things that I would try to keep in my mind, both me personally, but also hope other people could as well.
You mentioned resilience a lot through this interview.
Yeah.
How does someone find resilience within themselves if it's something that doesn't come naturally to them?
I do think that's an interesting one, because it can also be linked to mental health as well. So I think feeling resilient is probably something that you have to build up. So strengthening your mental health as much as you can. Physical things we cannot all control. I mean, I'm a quite accident-prone person, so I won't go into that. But I think that resilience is a mental thing as much as anything, and that probably, when I say resilience, I do think it's linked very strongly to flexibility and adaptability, because, if you, even breaking it down to a fabric or anything, something's resilient, it's not because it's as tough as anything. Yeah. It's not unbreakable, it's adaptable. And so, we are all breakable, both physically and mentally, but are we adaptable? I think that's a big thing. So I would say perhaps I could always substitute in my mind resilience for being, the ability to adapt, the ability to embrace change, and the ability to even encourage or plan for change, as needed.
I think that's an amazing answer, and really insightful as well. I think for a lot of people, they'll hear things like resilience, and sometimes people are like, well, I don't have that within me. So I think it's really important to understand what that means and what that can look like. And I think that's such a good answer for somebody that's trying to find their own resilience within themselves. Jenny, it's been amazing having you on the Be Unstoppable podcast. You've provided us with a wealth of knowledge. You always provide me with a wealth of knowledge. I love talking to you. I always walk away from it with so much more information than I came to the situation with. So thank you so much for being on the Be Unstoppable podcast. Thank you for all the work that you do within the entrepreneurial space and the investment space. And we're really pleased to have you here.
Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking with you as well. I get great pleasure out of that. I think we share a lot of things in common. But I've really enjoyed talking to everyone today. And hopefully we can both go onwards and upwards in this great work. So thanks very much for having me today.
Thank you. And for everybody watching, remember,
be unstoppable.
Be unstoppable.